Okay. I don't have a lot, I don't think. So maybe this is just one of those moment in the word moments. Uh, I think we're in pretty good shape for the shape we're in. You ever heard that terminology? I've had people say, I'm in pretty good shape for the shape I'm in. I think we are in pretty good shape for the shape we're in, as far as we're in pretty good shape who we are as a people, for the shape that we're in as a world, a society, a country. So here is the pocket that we find ourselves in. And it may seem like a conundrum, but if it is, it's a good one, and I've mentioned it before. It's in the scripture. It's not mine, of course. That the only way to the Father is through the way, the truth, and the life, right? And the only way to the way, the truth, and the life is if the Father draws you there. So, like I said, if it is a conundrum, it's a happy conundrum, because what other path would we rather travel than those two pathways, right? We have to have the Father draw us to Jesus, and Jesus then becomes our pathway to the Father. So we really wouldn't have it any other way. So again, I repeat, if it is a conundrum, it's a happy conundrum. So we should feel fortunate. There are worse places that we could be. And also, we find that there are nuances to finding yourself in this pocket, right? There's things that have to happen. There's criteria, if you will. One of the times that I thought about is in Matthew 13. We don't necessarily have to turn there, but it's when Jesus Christ was sitting at the shore of the sea, and these multitudes began to gather, and the following of him and his teaching and his preaching, whatever it was, these multitudes started to gather. So it's where he goes out to a ship, and I'm sure we've heard it said before, and I'm sure that had much to do with it. He wanted everyone to hear, and sound travels much better on the water. So he goes out to a ship to address these on the shore, and he does it with a sower parable, the sower parable, one of the times. And then, so we know how that goes, but then we know also that later the disciples wanted to discuss, why do you speak in parables? Why do you speak to these people in parables? And then if we're familiar with that scripture, which I know we are, we're familiar with the reply that Jesus gives them as to why he speaks in parables. He goes on to talk about the prophecy of Isaiah, and the hearts that are wax gross and the ears that are dull of hearing, and so forth and so on, and lest at any time I should have them to understand and be converted, and I should heal them. So he goes through that, right? So they want to discuss why. He gives them the answer, and he says it is to you of faith, to you the believer, it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Now, don't you always feel like you understand the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven? We could discuss and debate and even study just what we believe those mysteries of heaven are and what our understanding of them is. So we could do that. I personally do believe that it is an error to believe that there were no receivers in those multitudes, that he went out to the ship, those people that were gathering as he sat at the seashore, and he goes out to address them. I don't think he said that. I think it's an error if we think that there were no receivers in those multitudes. That's not what he said. Just because it is recorded for us in the Word, and it says it is given to you, and that's true of his called out ones. That's certainly a true statement of his taught ones, and that's who he's speaking to, because they're the ones who come and ask the question, right? Why do you speak in parables? And he is saying to them, it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. And that is a true statement to them, but it doesn't make it exclusive to everyone else, does it? And I say that because here he is on the seashore, and he's gone there for some respite, no doubt. He's a busy man. And then these multitudes start gathering here. So instead of me trying to address all these people here, let me go out, let me sit on this boat. My voice is going to travel, so I want everybody to hear. So I don't think he was wasting his breath, because we're told in the Word that his word does not return to him void. Or I don't think he spoke it just so the disciples could come back and have this little discussion about why do you speak in parables. So to think that there was no one there that also fits into that category, it is given to you. So if any in the multitudes if anyone in that multitude or in those multitudes were being drawn of God, then it's amusing to me, because if anyone in those multitudes were, then his parable that he's speaking of the sower was actually being lived out as it's crossing his lips. He was broadcasting seed with this parable, and the seed, some of it, would find the good ground, right? And he does use the prophecy of Isaiah, and I think that prophecy is in Isaiah 6, 9 and 10 or something. And he uses that in his explanation of why he speaks to them in parables. And in that explanation, we read that and we understand too that your heart, my heart, wasn't always understanding. Your ears and mine weren't always hearing, or our eyes seeing. And I think one of the things that happens here is, because of that, this allows an opportunity for blessing when those things do start to happen. And I think that's one of the things he's saying when he's using this when he's harking back to this scripture in Isaiah. It offers us an opportunity for blessing when those things start to change. And it is somewhat of a cautionary tale. I can't let you understand. I can't let you hear or see what you are not ready to receive. I think that's part of what he was saying when he was telling his disciples why he spoke to them in parables. I can't allow them to understand, hear, or see what they are not ready to receive. That's why there is only one source that can draw you to the way, the truth, and the life. One source. We're told what that is, and who else could be trusted with that job. Because once drawn to him, once drawn to Jesus, he becomes the path to the Father, as I've already stated. See, there are much worse places to be than in this pocket. Verse 17 of Matthew 13 says, "For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous people have desired to see those things which you see, and they haven't seen them, and to hear those things that you hear, and have not heard them." This is at the end, after he goes, they ask him the question, why do you speak in parables? He goes on to quote this prophecy from Isaiah, and then he says this to them. "For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous people have desired to see those things which you see, and have not seen them, and to hear these things that you hear, and have not heard them." Now, coming off of this description of why he speaks in parables, it would be easy for us to think, well, he's saying these things that you see, these things concerning the law, these, the holy days, whatever it happens to be, dietary law. But he uses words like, there have been many prophets and righteous people. Now that wording doesn't sound to me like it's necessarily about the law, or might I say only about the law. Because let us not forget that for 3.5 years, and I say let us not forget because I sometimes have to be reminded, or I get reminded, that for 3.5 years there was a group of people, yes, the 12, but quite a few other people, right? The entourages and the people that were, the partakers and the followers and the, But there was a group of people for 3.5 years that witnessed things that the rest of us have not. They were there during his ministry. Yeah, they got to see some things that the rest of us did, at least not firsthand, right? We have them. We have them recorded, lots of them, not all of them, because we go back to the scripture that says if everything that he did was recorded, there wouldn't be a room enough for the books that could be written. So it's a highlight reel is what it is of his ministry and what he done. So we don't get it necessarily firsthand. And also in that statement that he makes, many have desired to see what you see and hear what you hear. Hebrews 11:13. Hebrews 11:13, we know that scripture too. These all died in faith, not having received the promises. They didn't receive them, but having seen them afar off. And not only did they see them afar off, they were persuaded of them, that scripture says. Having seen them afar off and were persuaded of them, and not only that, but they embraced them and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Now, those two scriptures together, his closing statement to his disciples when they asked the question, this scripture in Hebrews 11:13, and to put a little more oomph in that concept, there's a scripture in John 6:36 where he says, you also have seen me and don't believe. You have seen it and you don't believe. How much more the people, like he talks about in the Hebrews 11:13, that have not seen and believe. And it was a similar situation with Thomas, you remember? Thomas said, unless I can see the nail scars in his hand and I don't believe it. So he told Thomas too, Thomas, you see me and struggle to believe. What about those who didn't? And his other disciples got a little scolding too, remember, for not believing when it was reported to them that he had risen. So, yeah. So yes, brethren, there are out there hearts that have waxed gross or are still waxed gross. That's not a term that we use in common or current lingo, is it? Hearts that have waxed gross, ears that are dull of hearing, and eyes that can't see, can't perceive. And I say those are out there as you and I once were, because I know that I was once in the crowd. I was once in the multitude that maybe was interested but wasn't understanding, wasn't hearing, whatever it is. And we've heard, Chris's story and other stories about the coming of this transition and this learning, and you're, again, once in the crowd. Now, we like characterizing ourselves as the few, right? And that's okay, because I know that the stories that I've heard, the stories that you've heard, there was joy. Maybe there was a little bit of a struggle too, but I think we would all testify, have a testimony that there was joy when we began. There was joy when we began to see and hear and understand differently, wasn't there? Man, there was an excitement, there was joy. There was seeing, hearing, and understanding differently. And I happen to believe that was not a moment before you were ready. Not one moment before I was ready. I can't let them hear, see, and understand what they're not ready to receive, lest at any time I could have them to understand, that I could have them converted and heal them. Now, there is some interest for me in that healed aspect of his statement there to his disciples. And maybe that's a question too for another message or a Bible study or whatever about what is your healing. what is that healing part of the process? And there's some obvious answers to that, I think, and there's also some interest in those he directed personally. As I was going through this little reading this morning, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's because you think about the disciples, and I read the story where I think it was John and Peter were going into the temple, and the guy that was laid there daily and asking alms, and he fixed his eyes on them and was expecting to, or when Peter looked at him, he looked back at him and was expecting something from him, and Peter says, I don't have what you're looking for. I don't have silver and gold, but what I have, I give to you. Rise up and walk. So, and I'm thinking, these disciples' lives, not only in Acts after Pentecost and after Christ's ascension and that kind of stuff, we see some healings taking place and demons being, but there was a time too when, I think it's in Luke chapter 10, when it talks about Jesus sent 70 out, 2 by 2. And he says, go into their homes and heal the sick and, eat what is set before you and all these different things. But when they came back, it said the 70 returned with joy and said, even the devils are subject to us through your name. Luke 10:17. So, yeah, there's a lot of I started to say envy, but it's not envy, but some of the power that was given to them. The Word teaches us to be patient, even with ourselves. So obviously we have to be patient with others. So that's my little moment in the Word today, this happy conundrum that we have trusted. Maybe at the time didn't trust because we didn't even realize it was happening, but not a moment before we were ready. God saw something, drew us to Jesus, and now we're riding shotgun with Jesus on that pathway back to the Father. And hopefully every day we get a little bit closer in that journey. But it is a happy conundrum. As I said, we are in this pocket, but there's worse places. So I'd say we're in pretty good shape for the shape we're in. All right, Chris, how about it?